Or on?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
no,
was,
not ready.
And the people that we are going to look to to actually implement the plan's recommendations. So it's good that we're taking the time necessary to get their feedback and hopefully buy-in into the plan. So they are in the process of sharing the implementation plan recommendations, that being the goals, strategies, and actions, with various department heads, commissions, chairpersons, and most recently with Economic Development Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission at both January and February meetings. We did get very good feedback from both EDC and Parks and Rec, and the Parks and Rec gave us very specific recommendations for revisions to our implementation plan and recommending new actions. So I want to go over those very quickly with you, just so you have an idea of what it is we're considering, some of the changes that we've made, and also to get your input and feedback on some of these ideas. So first, they asked that we revise the strategy regarding replacing facilities and services from continue to pursue a community center to continue work towards an accessible intergenerational facility providing improved social and recreational needs for all ages. So I think the intention here is to just kind of back away from tying anything directly to one specific project, that being the community center has been proposed across from the high school, to the idea of addressing the need for social and recreational facility. So I wonder if anyone has any thoughts on that language change to that strategy.
I mean, I think it's better because you're not also limiting it to a community center per se. It could be something else.
That's exactly right.
Who knows what can happen in the next 5 years? So I think that's broader, so that allows them to pursue different things.
As it has been, or as it was, we have yet to identify specific actions for this strategy. Really unsure how to move that forward. I don't think we're in the position to direct the town to take that project to referendum or anything like that. So by expanding this, it might give us some more options for recommending actions to move towards this strategy or goal.
I think we did have some suggestions from Economic Development Commission. Francisco, we can loop back on that, but it was pretty, just to have a broad action statement also, because again, thinking that we should have an action to follow every strategy if possible.
Right. And we did not, this is the only one we had not identified actions for, because we've really just needed more direction from other commissions and departments as how to proceed with this. It's in some ways a little bit of a hot potato. We don't want to commit the town to one pathway, because there's just more work to be done to figure out what the real needs are and what the cost benefit of providing a new facility is. Okay, so that was a strategy, and as a reminder, our implementation plan, we have a goal for each topic area, a number of strategies that are really bundles of actions to work towards that goal, and then the specific action items, the step-by-step things that need to be done that we can identify now. Of course, there'll be more actions as the town starts to implement these and work towards these goals and deploy these strategies. There'll be more actions that will be uncovered as we go along. But from our perspective now, we're trying to identify everything that needs to be done. So they did recommend, and once again, this is Parks and Rec, they did recommend coordinating with a new action to coordinate with and assist the Hungerford Nature Center to improve its public trail system and incorporate those trails into the town's website, apping, and mapping resource, along with all the other trails. And I wonder, once again, what do you think of that recommendation for a new action?
Francisco, do we know where the trail from Hungerford goes to? I mean, what trail it would hook up to potentially?
Yeah, Jim, can you provide a little insight on this? I'm not familiar with it myself.
Yeah, it's pretty much of a self-contained system, and we do have, there's a 21-acre parcel. They have the trails there. As most of you may know, the city of New Britain owns the parcel, leases it to, the Hungerford and its parent, nonprofit. And they use the trail system that supports the educational mission of the nature center. But the trails are also open to the public, and there's parking there. And it's another trail resource in town that we want to take advantage of. And we're also applying for a recreational trails grant now to help them improve those trails. So it just seems logical that we recognize those as public trails, resource for the town, and bring them in the loop.
Okay, but are those trails self-contained, or is there hope of them connecting to any of our trailways in the future?
No, I think it's,
Trail.
yeah, it's pretty much self-contained, and again,
Okay.
they'll do things,
Yeah.
our grant application is doing things like, removing invasives, planting native plants. They do educational things on the trails and stuff. So it's, it's good for, families, children, there's Berlin and New Britain school children use it now, but it's open to the public, so anybody can use it.
It does connect to Willowbrook Park. It's up underneath the highway.
Right.
And our half of Willowbrook Park, basically. Center line of the football field is the New Britain Berlin line is the center line of the football field. So, it does connect to Willowbrook Park, and Willowbrook Park does connect to other trail systems.
Yeah, they don't really want to, I talked to them in the recreational trails grant, application process about, improving the connection over to Willowbrook Park and New Britain High School and stuff. And they, I think their preference at this point is to, not to accentuate that connection right now.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
We do have the map that
Mhm.
is for the trails grant, so I can't pull it up now, but I have it in my office. We had discussion with regard to the conservation commission last
Okay.
week, so
Yeah, we
we can show it to you.
application for the grant.
Okay, terrific. Well, we don't
Show
have to
those two.
commingle, right, and we're on here. Thinking all has pathways.
I feel like I'm missing something. So they applied for a grant?
They are
Going to.
Jim is working with writing a
From the
grant,
town, or is that a state grant, or?
a state
To the
grant.
state.
Jim Cavalli.
Yes, that's correct.
About the
State,
grant.
yeah, state recreational trails grant. And, the town is going to be the applicant, we would be investing a small amount of, small amount of money in it, and they're investing, an equal amount in terms of cash match plus in-kind match to improve the trails, and again, it is a community resource.
So the property is owned by Berlin.
No, it's owned by New Britain. It's leased to the, Hungerford Nature Center, and they operate it as a public facility.
I understand contributing to the nature center,
Applying for the grant.
but it's in the Britain property that they should be looking for a grant for the property.
Number
Yeah, that's
of
not really-
entities applied to
here.
them.
Oh, no, I'm just saying that if we're putting grant money into the improvement of those trails. My always been a problem with New Britain never contributing to us, but if we go improve their trails on their property, it's a little. The trails should be improved. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, I'm saying that they don't contribute. We had a problem with taxes on the stadium there, Wolverine Park. We had problems with any other properties that the city of New Britain owns in the town, which they don't pay any tax for. And our investment should be in our own trails, trails that I know you investigated. You know, either the railroad tracks, old railroad tracks trails or other trails that connects the greenways in our town. And you know, that's where I think our money should be headed. There has been improvement on the nature trail in the last probably 6 years.
Okay.
That, just to clarify, that's not the only trail included in the trails grant application. There are trails throughout town that are all part of the application, and it includes some aspects for matching. So you have to get the partners so that you get some of that matching, which then allows us to get grant money for trails that are just the towns. So we've got these partners that help us to put the grant together. Then you have the weight to hopefully get the grant. By them being partners as well. That's my understanding of it. I'm not the fabulous grant writer that we have. But that's my understanding of it. Just that, and it does include, the proposal included other trails throughout town. I think those are the trails grant.
Okay. All right, sorry for the sidebar, we're just trying to understand.
Yeah, so to come back to this recommendation specifically, is this a recommendation we would like to make within the P O C D, that there be this kind of investment made, or that those trails be incorporated into as like a part of the town-wide system, at least on maps?
I'm thinking, no.
I'm just thinking that
We don't own the property.
improve public trails systems and incorporate trails into the website and the apps and mapping, that I don't have a problem with, but to point out a specific trail when we have plenty of, we have trails to improve in our own town. Not should be saying that, but
So
I don't know that one place should be placed in a 10-year plan.
Well, maybe coordinate with and assist in improving. Well, I was gonna say
We
with
just-
trails and systems.
If you take it and just start with improve public trail systems and incorporate Hungerford trails into the website apps and mapping resources.
yeah, we could focus on just including their trail system into mapping and leave it to them to maintain and improve their trails,
Yeah.
if that's what you're more
Yes,
comfortable
that
with.
makes sense.
You know, it's more broad spectrum by taking out the name of one place.
Well, I think that a lot of people just figure that Hungerford's in Berlin, so Hungerford belongs to Berlin, and it doesn't. So,
Okay, well, let's keep moving. I've got
Yeah.
more than one slide like this.
you asked.
The next one is pretty straightforward. Lobby the Connecticut Department of Transportation to improve its maintenance of the edges of the rights of way and median along the Berlin Turnpike.
Just as a clarification, that came from the Economic Development Commission. So some of these,
Okay,
I'm on vacation this week, so Francisco and I didn't coordinate on every item, but so just think about the action and not that they all came from Parks and Rec.
thank you for the clarification, Jeff.
Well, when you talk about the edges of the right of way. What do we?
I think,
What do you mean?
well, we're talking about like Ed Egazarian, obviously has the building down there, and the DOT cuts the grass at the along the right of way. I mean, the right of way extends beyond the paved areas, so it's wider than the paved areas. So you know, he just wants, you know, he just doesn't think that they're well maintained and, you know, therefore asked that they should maintain it better. And they maintain right of ways better in other places. So it seems like, you know, a no brainer.
Like to lobby the Department of Transportation to bury all the power lines along the turnpike too.
Yeah, they should have.
Farm to Avenue.
Yeah, with their big ass poles over there, they should have taken advantage. Yeah, I would love to see like flowers and stuff like that blooming in the boulevard, the Meridian, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Don't tell me it's too much maintenance.
I think the concern is their grass cutting program, which has over the last
Yeah.
couple of years
Well,
gone
they-
down pretty bad.
it's ugly.
When someone complains when they're 3 or 4 foot high grass in the medium, they come down the grass and cut it. But they don't cut it until that point.
Well, if they had
And
soft
I could
grass.
see why, the maintenance of the edges right of ways should be maintained. And I think the town probably should be lobbying the Connecticut Department of Transportation to improve all their right of ways throughout the town. Farmington Avenue now, you know, they did improvements on Farmington Avenue. We done a lot of work on Farmington Avenue. And now it's starting to look a little old again. So, you know, there are improvements on the right of ways, of all the right of ways, and their state highways. And I can see the, you know, the sight lines on Sykes Road not being good because they're not maintaining, you know, far enough off the edge of the road. So,
Well, I mean, the question I have is that this is something,
Should we have this in there on a 10-year plan, or is this something we should be doing now?
I just don't know if, you know, Francisco, that would be more of a question to you as far as it being part of a P O C D.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
It's not out of place in a POCD. I think we need to think more about, is this recommendation likely going to get any traction at all?
No.
Will lobbying DOT really change their maintenance practices?
I think we just have to go and plant sawgrass on our own in the Meridian. No, honestly, because you can grow that stuff, it looks really nice and, you know, beautify it up.
I
Yeah,
could just see
Mike.
this recommendation sitting within the plan and the Berlin Turnpike looking exactly the way it looks 5 years from now, you know, with
Yeah.
respect to the DOT's maintenance. And
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to put things in the plan that as a town, you have very little control over. Well, yeah, you have control over lobbying the DOT by calling a meeting and calling them up and writing a few letters. You don't have a lot of control of the outcome of that.
I think it's more.
we could
that
recommend to
than
the town fathers, they call up the Department of Transportation, tell them what our needs are. And them lobbying the DOT to get their acting in place with this. But I don't think it's a plan.
Yeah, I guess
Anyway, all right.
I would just say, you know, again, you guys can go either way on this thing, but you know, it's kind of calling attention to an issue that's brought forward by the EDC that they think is important. And, you know, if I think, you know, again, we've had in the past the participation of the other commissions more in the planning process, you know, so if it's, I don't see any downside of putting it in, but if you really don't want it in there, then take it out.
I think it's a good idea to do, I just don't see it as a place in the P O C D. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
Chris Edges, I think he's, you know, they should reach out and try and.
Surely there should be the town fathers to follow up on. I don't think it's.
The POCD does have a role in protecting the character of the town and establishing a vision for the community and identifying needs with respect to infrastructure and maintenance. So it's not out of place. I agree that this is probably just regular work that should be done to maintain that line of communication and that's to communicate that standard of expectation, but I don't think it's out of place in a P O C D.
Just making sure.
Yeah, all right. I don't think there's any harm in it being there.
Okay,
I understand the point is made that do we really want it in there? So I can go either way, but we could just leave it in there for now and
okay,
I don't know. I just think I should just leave it.
all right.
See what happens. Maybe something.
Okay, well, let's go to the next one. The next one is to prepare an accessibility plan to evaluate the accessibility of existing sidewalks and to recommend projects to improve accessibility. Now, much of this has to do with curb ramps, but it also has to do with the surface conditions of sidewalks as well. These can be pretty, you've got a decent number of miles of sidewalks, so this can be a pretty extensive undertaking. It's one, to some degree, the town is obligated to do by the Department of Justice under the American Disability Act. So
Yeah, we've we've now been contacted by DOT asking us to, for responses to questionnaires regarding accessibility of sidewalks and pointing out there are federal regulations that deal with this. And like we have an ADA plan for buildings, but we don't have an ADA plan for sidewalks. So, and this could be a requirement for future grants, I'm sure. So it's putting, I think it's important to put this on the radar. It's something that we really do need to address.
Yeah, but how many sidewalks get installed without a ramp? Aren't they always at the crosswalks and stuff? I don't know of any sidewalks that don't have.
My recollection is that we have quite a few areas where we do have older sidewalks. And having done the very rudimentary walk audit with through the center of town. They were during that audit pointing out problematic areas, whether it's the current ramp isn't today's code and is an older code, or has fallen to disrepair, or there are places there aren't ramps or aren't the proper signaling that goes along. And that doesn't necessarily mean it needs a signal, but that it needs proper signage or something else that goes along with it. That's what I gleaned from the walk on. So I think there are some problematic areas. I imagine our sidewalk plan speaks to it a little bit, but probably not where the sidewalk plan we have, I believe, focuses more on connectivity than on ADA.
Correct.
Yeah, and if we, we need to do an assessment. So hopefully we're going to go out there and we're going to assess it. We're going to find there's not many problems, and that's great, and if you do the assessment, like again, with buildings, there's a lot of detailed requirements for ADA accessibility for buildings, and we've made a lot of improvements. So maybe we'll find some things that we need to be paying attention to. But if it's, if everything's great, perfect. But at least we've done the evaluation. We have, we know our sidewalks are accessible, meet the standards, and that issue is not going to keep us from getting future transportation grants.
Yeah. Well, good luck on Worthington Ridge.
Right.
It's not gonna happen. All right, but that's okay.
Okay, so
Let's go.
we'll keep that. And then the last item on this slide, and I highlight it in blue because I really feel like we do have this covered. It may just be a matter of us adjusting our wording to make sure it captures the idea. And that is to continue to invest in improving existing sidewalks and making sidewalks more accessible and to fill gaps in the existing sidewalk network.
Yeah. All right.
We do have an action that basically recommends exactly that. Wording's a little different, so I think we have this covered. I will revisit our language to make sure it is expansive enough to to accommodate this idea, but I think we have this covered.
I think it should say ADA, to get the sidewalks into ADA compliance. Because
Well, that could potentially be merged in
you know,
one.
because you gotta say that ADA in order to get some funds to do it. There's a lot of funds out there for ADA improvements. They just did the sidewalks at the town hall. They have that metal.
Yeah.
uh,
The,
Things on the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
They can feel it if they're walking, going down the ramp, they can feel the bumps, the knobs on it, they gotta be a certain standards now, ADA accessible ramps have to be a certain standard. So if ADA is mentioned in either of these two, ADA compliance and accessibility, I think will be more.
okay,
Yeah, but this isn't the grant that you're applying for. This is just, but I mean, if they were to write the grant, I'm sure they would use
There's more
ADA.
force in, I'm just saying there's more force in the wording
All
to
right.
get this done.
yeah.
For ADA compliance.
That's why we did choose to use the word accessible, or they chose to use the word accessible. We'll just make sure that we do make that reference back to accessibility and ADA compliance. So it's not just about expanding the network, but it's also improving the existing network to be ADA compliant. So we'll make sure that our language covers that.
All right, excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, good. Next.
Page 2.
Next slide, yes. So once again, starting with the recommendation, and I'm going to modify our title here to make sure it's inclusive of any feedback from Economic Development Commission. And so this starts with a recommendation for an action that, once again, I think we already have well covered, and that is to update the town sidewalk plan, including consideration of connections, and there they all are to Kensington Village, from Farmington Avenue and school areas such as Berlin High, Willard, McGee, including Worthington Ridge Historic Area, and sidewalk connections in vicinity of schools, including Griswold School, East Berlin, etc. This is not my wording, it's kind of all over the place, but the idea here is that they want to make sure these village center and school connections are made. And the language of our recommendation basically provides that broad guidance. We could probably sharpen that up a little bit to make sure it's focused on the schools and village centers. But I think we have this covered, and I don't think is there any disagreement about improving sidewalk network in the villages and to the schools?
No, I think that would cover it
Yeah,
much better than
it
being
was good.
this specific.
And
Okay,
can I just add that I think because we had the goal of that action and have made progress towards the connectivity, that incorporating a word that says continue updating or something that, you're the better, wordsmith as far as that goes. Obviously going to be wordsmithing this, but I think we don't want it to sound like it's a new action. I mean, I know it's a new action as far as something newly proposed, but it's been it's something that the town has been doing, so continue
Right.
or whatever, and highlighting that.
Continuing
This is not something starting in 2023.
to advance the sidewalk project.
Yeah, or something. I just think that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gives credit where credit is due to the
Do a
last
little bit more.
decades of work.
Yeah.
sure. Okay, yeah, all right, we'll make sure the wording reflects the work that's has been done and is ongoing. All right, the next item, and this is once again a new recommendation for an action, is to update the town's capital improvement plan on an annual basis. And in the next CIP update, consider adding projects to the plan that address the goals, strategies, and actions of this plan.
So I think we want to try to establish a link between the CIP and the POCD. Because often in state grant applications, they're asking, how is this project referenced in the town's plan of conservation and development? So we want to strengthen that linkage between the CIP and the POCD.
Okay,
Makes sense?
Makes sense.
yeah, it does. That's what you gotta do.
Okay.
Francisco's
Next is to
Yeah, I know.
create,
It's too bad that you have to draw that kind of a link, you know what I mean, when you're writing for the grant monies. That you have to explain it like that, you have to share the reasons why, it just. Anyway,
That's a specific question that they often ask. So, yeah, we do.
incredible. Sorry about that, Jim.
No
Anyway,
problem.
next Francisco.
okay. Create and fund a grants match account to provide grants matching funds that will increase the opportunity to secure grant funds to fund projects in the CIP or otherwise recommended in this POCD. And as you're probably all aware, typically the match on a grant can be 20%, sometimes only 10%. But that money has to come from somewhere, and sometimes in some communities, state or federal money gets left on the table because there aren't funds available to provide the match. The idea here is to seed an account that has funds available to it to provide that match, so you don't miss out on opportunities.
And we're really with the, new federal grant funding over the last, year that's trickling down. We're recognizing this issue, and I know that Arosha has recommended that they create this account in the budget, but and I'm always going to the council saying, asking for their authorization to apply for grants, and the finance department position is that you have to identify the account at the time, when you apply for the grant. So you can't take it out of, some fund, some next year's budget, figure it out later. So, it's important if we're going to pursue these grant opportunities, which we are, that, we kind of had that seed money to help us succeed.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Would it make sense to also include maybe a separate bullet somewhere in the plan? For establishing a fund to acquire development rights, because that's one of the recommendations also for the farmland preservation.
That can be, if that can be added. I think we've got some things about, funding open space acquisitions. I don't think we have anything specifically on acquiring development rights at this time. I can't recall. Francisco, we don't, right?
No, we definitely have a lot of pro conservation recommendations, but I think a specific one about establishing a fund.
Maybe it could be a combined fund. Because I don't imagine there would be lots of opportunities to purchase development rights, but you may have opportunity to buy open space.
When you say purchasing rights,
Purchase
development rights, how do you mean? What do you mean by that? Just so I'm clear on it.
To preserve farmland, the town could purchase development rights, which basically would preserve the farmland from development perpetuity.
As
The
opposed to,
town would purchase that right. They would buy the building rights from the landowner.
okay, but that's not the same as buying space or buying.
No.
Right.
Better restricts, like when they go to sell that land. It can't develop on it, you could really only use it for farm. So and the seller, the property owner, well, they get the development rights from the town, so they get that portion of the money, then when they sell the land, they get that, so combine it, kind of makes them whole.
The town created a rotating fund for the fire departments to purchase fire trucks as they get older and stuff like that. And if they started a fund like that in the budget that contributes to every year. The yearly cost is down a little bit instead of buying one big chunk of grant. Basically, an extra funds. You keep on putting money into the fund every year over the course of 10 years, and then your funds build up. For future grants. It's the way they do it in fire department now, so the fire truck. They know what fire trucks need to be replaced in the next 10 years, so they do a rotating fund for that. And there's no question that the funds are there for the trucks. Addition.
So is that an additional action you'd like us to consider as part of our other open space and conservation recommendations? Is that the town establish a fund for either purchasing open space or development rights?
Well, do we need to acquire more open space? Yeah,
Well, we are advocating for it to better link protected open space in the town.
It's a question of one or the other. I think it's a question of, I mean, if somebody has a farm, they're gonna have the option now, do I sell it to the town so they have it as open space? Or as Diane says, do I sell the right of development to the town and I continue to own it, continue to farm it, knowing that it'll always be a farmland, no matter who has it. So I think you give them that option as opposed to one preferred to the other, because a farmer may not want their land developed, but they still want to enjoy it. They still want to work it. Maybe their son wants to work it. So you want them to have that option to keep going with the farm, but by selling the development rights, it sort of secures that no matter what happens, who takes over, that will always be open. It will never be developed. So I think that that's an attractive idea. And it's definitely an option that I think some people would look at, as opposed to them losing their land or selling off their land for open space.
So I guess the answer would be, just like we're saying create a, and fund a grants match, we're saying yes to do the same thing. We'd recommend to create and fund an account for acquiring open
space.
Right, acquiring open space as well as development rights. Because as you said, Francisco, we're advocating for more open space, so this is kind of putting the teeth behind it and how we would recommend to go forward. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a look at where that might fit into our broader recommendations.
Bring that to this attention. Say what you, Francisco, Diane was
Yes.
just sort of elaborating on this, and it's.
Yeah, my only thought is in making that recommendation is that without actually taking the action to establish the account, if the opportunity for the town came up to acquire open space or purchase development rights without already having an account in place and money set aside, they may not have the money to do that. You know what I mean? It's like planning for the future to.
Yeah, and like the grants issue, sometimes if you have to wait until the next budget for that money to be made available, sometimes too late.
Yeah, exactly, opportunity prize.
Yeah.
All right.
And in the past, we did bond for open space acquisition, and then we had funds available as property became available. We kind of exhausted all of those, but it's the same theme. if you don't have any money available, then these opportunities present themselves and you take advantage of them and you make it happen, or it passes you by.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at least we have a little bit more opportunity. Okay,
All right, the last item, we kind of covered this already. The last item was basically a recommendation to add to our strategy about the community senior center that to basically to ensure that town continue the process of evaluating that. So I think we'll take this and we'll fold it into that larger recommendation to take a step back and make a recommendation just to continue to evaluate needs and meet the needs of the community and of seniors for social programming and education. We'll just repackage all of that to really make it a little more open and flexible so that we're not tying it to one specific project.
Yeah, it's very similar to the one that was on the previous slide, so.
Right, exactly. All right, next slide. Next slide is comprised of revised actions. And the first one being to undertake a complete inventory of town properties and identify properties that may be appropriate for new uses, additional protection, or that could be sold to generate revenue, reduce maintenance costs, and generate additional tax revenues.
And I just would indicate that the council did have start a conversation Tuesday night about what do they want to do with Pistol Creek, whether they want to sell off any portion of it or maintain it all for public use and such. And this is, I know the finance department has been looking at properties. We have started to work on a map. We're almost kind of finished the categorizing existing town properties, having that inventory. So it's kind of wrapping that up and you know, making people aware of what we own and what the options are, and creating that decision-making process.
So Jim, should this read continue to complete an inventory if that process is somewhat underway?
Well, it's underway, but it wasn't, I guess in terms of past plans and such, it wasn't, you know, so.
Okay. Do you have a sense that there is a decent amount of town land that could potentially be sold that would actually benefit the town because it's not that valuable for conservation purposes or for any other town use?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be pretty limited.
Okay.
But again, Pistol Creek, you know, in the past, we looked at, there has been, you know, conversations about various parcels that aren't deed restricted, and do we want to sell? And the council has always said, no, we don't want to sell. So it really hasn't been anything where the town has sold land, but now seems to be a consideration with Pistol Creek. And also in our affordable housing plan, recall that, you know, we recommended that we do an inventory of town parcels to see if any of them would be suitable for affordable housing. So this just kind of broadens that out to other uses as well. Again, I don't think there's going to be a lot there, but it is worthwhile, I think, to kind of complete the inventory, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about before about which properties should be de-restricted. Are there any others that should be de-restricted that aren't, and such? You know, it's just kind of really understanding what the town owns and managing it.
Okay.
Jim, can I ask, if the town is looking at Pistol Creek, are they looking at selling the entire parcel?
This was just, you know,
A
town manager,
conversation, I
they
know.
just started the conversation. I don't think there's any direction at this point, but I think my guess would be, no, they wouldn't be selling the entire parcel. Do they want to sell any of it is more the question. And, you know, it could be, you know, there's I believe, about 87 acres there, three of the four corners of that intersection. So, you know, could you do other things there? Possibly.
Because we just bought that corner for what, 1.5 million?
No, the
So-
last piece we bought was the frontage lots along Atkins Street for $1 million. That was
Okay,
about 15, 16 acres, right? 15, 16 lots, right?
yeah, 13, and I think it would,
Right.
yeah, I
Sorry.
think it was. Yeah, the only reason the only reason this piqued my curiosity, obviously, and this is all just conversation, there's nothing
Right.
solidified. But it kind of, I don't know. It kind of boggles the imagination that we fought for that 13 acres there. And now they're considering, well, how much of this do we really need? And I think the town would be very upset, the people who are over there utilizing Pistol Creek, I think they would be very upset if they ever found out or whatever, that there was actually some consideration for selling off some or whatever. Because, the whole idea is that they bought it as an open space. And it was an opportunity that had presented itself. And then it's gone back and forth, and finally, it's the complete picture. And now to find that they may be batting around an idea. I mean, the whole idea is that we're trying to get open space, so we would have parks and stuff. I was taken back by that, but that's okay. I mean, I realize everything's in the wind here.
Right. And again, that's where the P O C D, you can make the recommendation you want to make.
I
It's
realize,
not de-restricted now.
I realize that we haven't done an inventory of our town properties in a lot of years. But I know that when we did do it years ago, our percentage of town-owned property and open space property and town property owned by land trust and open lands, our percentage was very high compared to other towns and around Connecticut. It would be good to get an inventory and exactly find out what it is. And that's the reason why we did that inventory years ago, is to make sure that we are actually more in supply than other towns, keeping our flavor of our town the way it is. The farm town part of it, the open space part of it, we're trying to keep it the way it is. And the inventory should be done. I'm surprised that the town doesn't have a full inventory of it right now.
Yeah, I think the thing that's lost, is really the parcels that were taken as open space as part of subdivisions over, when the commission was actively doing that instead of taking the fee. So there's little slivers all over the place. And then since then, I think the commission has taken the position, like if it's not connected to anything, if it's going to be a maintenance issue, et cetera, that the town, is not going to take the parcel. But we have a lot of these slivers that are protecting stream corridors and having various functions, but I think most people don't even know we have them. So I think really completing the inventory is valuable, and then we'll see where we go from there. But again, it's obviously if the town decides to sell or release any of this property, it's going to come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation under 824. But you should be aware of this, that there was a conversation that was started on Pistol Creek, and so take that into consideration.
That's why I think this inventory is very important, because they asked right in the beginning of this thing months ago that we find out what our greenways, are they connected? Because I think a lot of the greenways are connected with the small slivers you were just talking about. We filled in a lot of with conservation easements.
Yeah.
Slivers
Those are
of land that was given to the town. All that has, I think that the greenways are getting established around the streams and stuff. And what's not established, we should establish. So, before we go considering getting rid of any of our inventory of property,
Yeah.
we should find out
I'm all for
what we have established for greenways, what we have established for
Cool.
future hiking trails. The one behind all those condos on Pearl Turnpike, that now is in subject now. That wouldn't have been in subject a bunch of years ago, but now it is. And it's a good piece of property too, for hiking trails and stuff, nice pond and on the road.
How, I think, how about just adding into that statement appropriate for protection, comma, new uses? Oh, additional protections after it, I'm sorry, I wasn't reading fast enough.
It was all
I'm at the start of the sentence, then it's sent to the middle, I'm sorry.
supposed to be for passive recreational uses. Trails and walking trails.
Yeah.
That's what the commission basically was pushing those open space subdivisions for passive recreation.
I think it's important to note that the inventory would also includes other town properties, so just, realize that, perhaps. Imagine that this complex didn't have as many buildings on it, that, maybe it would have additional land that is it the right place for, say, a community center or something else, as opposed to only those that we traditionally think of as open space. We're thinking of it as the open space properties, but a town property inventory will include town facilities as well, town properties in general, so that's worth noting.
Yeah, we started to work on a map, so we can share that with you with the proviso that it's, draft and we have to do some additional work on it, but I think it'll get you the idea. And at this point, we put the properties into 3 or 4 categories, whether it's, open space, parks, town facilities, and kind of catch all everything else. But it does help us to think about what we own.
Okay, so I think we agree that this is a worthwhile endeavor and that we should include it as an action,
I think so.
right?
You should
Yep.
identify the property.
Okay,
How they're owned, no matter how they're owned, participation easements,
Yes, all town property.
land trusts, whatever, it's usable open space. Should be all put in there.
Did, Jim, did the, Economic Development Commission ever come forward or present any kind of plan for the clubhouse at Pistol Creek?
I don't know. I mean, Chris, I think, talked to them about it at various times. I don't think the EDC came up with a plan. But obviously with Pistol Creek, that's been one of the conversations about whether, people have an interest in, doing something with the clubhouse, whether it's a banquet facility, whether it's, the YMCA or, whatever, various people have expressed interest over time. But, if,
Because,
That was talked about at
What-
town council the other night as well.
yeah,
as part of
because
the
Yeah.
whole-
I always thought it would be a nice event menu. In the sense that, I talked about this before, Old Saybrook has the, pavilion down on the water, which used to be next to the old Dock and Dine. And it's an event menu that you can rent as long as you're a citizen of the town. And you pay a fee for renting it. You bring in your own food or beverages or whatever, and you have to clean it up after the evening's done. But it's very successful and it runs out very well. And it's always busy. You have to plan at least a year in advance. So if you want a birthday party or anniversary or a wedding or a shower or something, that place is always hopping. And I don't know. It would probably be a good thing for us to have. You bring your own caterer or whatever. I realize that it would have to be brought up, but at least it might be something that the town would have.
Well, Maureen, maybe if you could, I think Arosh sent a memo to the council for the Tuesday meeting, which was really, it's not a recommendation. It's just, she got from all all the different departments, like brainstorming. What could it possibly be, And also he catalogs the issues, the uses that we currently put the facility to. So like food pantry or whatever. And, those uses would have to, if they, if we leased it out to somebody else, they'd have to find new homes. So those are all important things. But, and I don't think, again, I don't think we need to beat this to death for the POCD purposes, but it sounds like you guys are interested. So maybe Maureen could send you that, and you can keep an eye on it as it goes forward.
That'd be a great restaurant. Anyway, okay. Oh, I like the fact that you have open space for pony rides. Pony
All
riding,
right,
that's,
before we jump to that one,
oh, boy.
let's talk about the second item, which is a recommendation to evaluate options to reduce and simplify farm-related zoning regulations. We do currently have an action item recommendation that we expand, take a look at expanding the accessory uses allowed on farms so that they could be more financially viable by providing some of those uses.
Mhm.
We don't address any need, and I'd like to hear from you if this is a real need to reduce or simplify zoning regulations as related to farms.
So can I just add to that really quickly, that also, I believe it came from the town council the other night, but we hear it regularly at the counter as well, that the small animal regs, particularly regulations.
Chickens?
Chickens.
Chickens.
Chickens is that the fact that 10 acres is required is more than some residents feel is appropriate.
Agreed.
That said, on the other side, we regularly get complaints with regard to anyone that does have chickens as well. So it's a balancing act of which resident are you as to whether or not, how you feel about farm animals. Whether they be small animals or how much is enough for a horse or 2 horses or two goats versus well, we want to use a pig. I was gonna use the word pig. 2 pigs versus, 5 pigs or what have you, and what would be required to do that. You all may recall that for the keeping of animals, the regulation used to read 3 acres. And when the regulations were revised in around 2016, I'm thinking 2014, 2016, it was updated to the 10 acres with how I understood it, not being in the trenches at that point as far as the regulation goes, that smaller farm or hobby farm regs were going to eventually be updated, and there possibly was a public group that was interested in coming forward with something and they never
Yeah.
had. And so I don't know if that's exactly where this comes from, but that also I had noted that I would bring that up tonight as well.
And I think that's a good idea. I think it should be revisited. I think to have a couple chickens or whatever, the need for 10 acres or whatever it is, to have a couple chickens. I think it's.
So then that's what, maybe instead of saying evaluate options to reduce and simplify, we
Yeah.
kind of reword it that, we revisit, the farm regulations overall.
Yeah.
To just put it that way, because then we're not saying that we have to reduce them. I mean, simplifying some of them probably would help, and like you said, we talk about accessory, but maybe, some of the issues are if you can't sell it if you don't grow it. Well, maybe there's something we can do on that, on that side. So I think putting it in there that, we'll commit to reviewing them, or however we want to word that, review it, update it or whatnot. But I think when you put reduce and simplify, that might throw it off a little bit.
Maybe you wanna have evaluate options to improve farm-related zoning regulations to encourage farming in the town of Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, nicely done, Diane.
When we had the 3 acre thing was. Cut down to numbers of animals. And how do you regulate numbers of animals? You know, I mean,
Yeah,
you go have 10 chickens or 3 goats or whatever. And you got that in your regulation, and then they have babies. And it's always become a question to neighbors, basically. It's not the numbers
Yeah, the
really,
neighbors,
but the
neighbors keep track.
neighbors keep track of those numbers, and you start getting zoning.
And we get golf.
All of a sudden, they got 5 instead of 3.
That said,
I
I
think
think that
it's-
a lot of small, small hobby uses, so to speak, that the many towns do have regulations that relate the number of animals to,
how.
or the size and number to the lot size.
Yeah.
So, but it'd take, it will take study of what best practices are. I'm not really sure what the agricultural term for best practices is, but it's kind of that best practices. What is healthy for, well, I'm gonna pick on a horse,
The state
live
has-
on.
The state
Right.
has BMP's, those guidelines.
what is it, BM? Oh, that is best practices.
Yeah.
Okay, so best practices in the record.
She need like an acre for a horse. I don't know, I just see, I can't see having.
Well,
R
when
11
we
or
were
715, I don't think that they should have animals.
when we were looking at the farm regulations previously, when Glenn Chalder
Yeah.
was assisting with that,
Right,
that was the approach that
was
we
going to
were
be
considering.
taken. Yeah, I
So-
was thought that would be really fast, so I just missed the.
But I think I
What
might
happened?
have a lot of that still.
I may be needing that.
You may have to look for it. Okay,
So let me ask you this, if we do add something to this effect and we just change it to improve farm-related zoning regulations, how do they need to be improved? To be more permissive or to be more restrictive, or is it about being more restrictive in some areas and more permissive in other areas?
I think that nails it.
Yes.
yeah,
I think also
Seriously, it does.
clarity.
There are some areas I think that should be tightened up a little bit, and then again, I think there's other areas that should be expanded to make farming more.
Okay.
an option.
Feasible.
Feasible. I mean,
Okay.
you can't just farm, you know?
I think they need some, I think one of what I'm hearing also is clarity.
Yes.
Might be in
So
our larger
they're somewhat confusing.
zones. RA6, our LIMR, incorporated into those zoning,
Well, I
you know what I mean?
So clarity as to exactly what is allowed and what is not allowed, and where that is allowed and where it is not allowed, is that it?
I think there's probably, and it was noted probably while before the meeting, definitions is frequently a downfall.
Okay. All right.
Does that help you out? No, right?
Yeah, no, that's very good guidance. It provides a lot more direction than this passage alone. So thank you.
Well, I think also, given the cost of things. I think we're finding a lot of people like sneaking the chickens in the backyard and stuff, and they're.
With the cost of eggs right now, I would.
Well, the cost of eggs, exactly, so, I mean, you, all of a sudden, somebody with an R11 or R15 wants to have a dozen chickens in their backyard, and I don't think that that's a very good idea under any plan. But we wanna make sure that if somebody does have the acreage, that they may not have 10 acres, they may only have a couple acres, but they should be able to have a couple chickens to offset the cost, you know, or.
The car
And you
site.
have the controls in place regarding the distance, any sort of chicken coop would have to be from
Or-
property line, et cetera. Yeah.
And a lot of that is in the current regs,
And then
it's
you
just a matter of the size of the lot required.
So,
Yeah.
one of, and I know we've mentioned it previously, but part of, that, the bullet relating to the farm zoning regulations is, consideration in the POD zone to allow a home to be developed, but like on a larger parcel. So we don't wanna see residential developments there, but to have somebody be able to build a house to go along with their farm, I think would encourage.
We
more
do have
farming.
recommendation to that effect.
Yes, I thought so. I knew we
Yeah.
talked.
Okay. All right. Very good. Now do
Okay, I think we have that covered.
All right,
So the last one is, and this obviously came from Parks and Rec Commission, is
No,
to
it didn't.
consider expanding the use of open space areas by providing places for horse riding. Or horseback riding.
Actually, it came from Chris Capola on the Economic Development Commission. So-
It did?
Kind of had a feeling.
oh,
Figure that one out.
I got that one totally wrong.
oh, jeez.
I thought that was a
Nothing.
safe assumption.
And other players.
I mean, in
Okay,
reading some things that I've seen posted on like the Berlin Buzz and Berlin
Yeah, you wanna
Talks,
read those, yeah.
where people talk about, you know, for example, going through Pistol Creek or something like that for a walk, and then they're seeing, you know, excuse the French, but horse poop on the trail. Well, maybe if there's other areas that people feel that they can ride the horses, they wouldn't necessarily go on the walking trails as much, so it might not be a bad idea to at least explore it.
Well, you know, the beauty of it is a horse doesn't need asphalt. So if we have Pistol Creek and we have walking trails at Pistol Creek, why couldn't we have a set horse trail? So you just take it.
Bridle path.
Yeah, like a bridle path. It doesn't need any necessary, and it doesn't really need any treatment because horses just love to walk out in nature. But you just need to have a beaten path. And it could actually mirror or cross over some of the walking trails. Now, if you got a bunch of people on horses and there's poop over there, okay, fine, don't worry. But if a walker like myself says, oh, I want to go on the pony trail, and I walk on the pony trail, I know to expect horse poop. Because I'm in their territory.
Right, right.
But I think it'd be kind of,
And all comes down to connection of open space, where you can put trails and stuff like that.
But you don't even necessarily have to have a trail in open space to take your.
Could it just be an open field?
Exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
absolutely his own way.
I guess the question that I have is horse riding prohibited on the trails that we have?
No,
I don't think so.
So I guess what's the issue?
well, some people are walking and they see a horse.
No, I
poop.
get it, but if you wanna expand open space area, I don't know. So the horse riding can be in a place different.
Yeah.
Different.
From the walker, so I mean, somebody might have a fear of horses. It could be, they had seen them as big dogs, you know, and they're like, ugh.
So is this the
I think-
matter of not expanding the use of, but rather designating open space areas?
I think that might be
Specifically for,
That might be a better phrasing of it.
There's a lot of horse trails, like Ragged Mountain has a lot of horse trails in them.
Well, I
No,
would
like,
say you would wanna simplify it and just designate areas where they're not allowed. And then, you know, like for the most part, Blue Trail would be open for horseback riding and, you know, areas that are not paved.
Yeah,
um,
because you don't need it in a paved area.
Might be simpler.
is this really an issue though? I mean,
In other
is-
words, saying.
Who go riding in town, they go riding on the trails.
Right,
All of us, they go up there.
But is it, I think what Francisco's asking is, Is it an issue that deserves designation within the P O C D?
Yeah, is this really an issue? Is this a solution in search of the problem here? Or,
Eloquently put.
I mean, is there really a problem? Is there a problem with respect to a conflict between?
I
People and-
honestly have no problems. with
Could
the
be
essence
just
of-
marking the trails that are
Yeah,
horse friendly. You know, the trails are enough in town.
Do you
Well, I
know,
think all of it-
Sandra?
Hungerford Park was horse
Do you
trails.
know?
Now they're using them for
How
walking
much of
trails,
an
but
issue?
it was all horse trails.
I think, honestly, I've heard some, like, they don't know where they can go, or like I said, sometimes they'll, you know, they'll be on a trail and if it's one that maybe, thank God it's not so much around here, but, you know, sometimes ATVs or motorbikes will be on them. And I think, again, people aren't sure, like, well, if I go take my horse on this property and I go on a trail, you know, someone tells me I'm not supposed to be there, how do I know I'm not? You know, who's right? And again, then they start talking about poop and all that kind of stuff, so,
That's Mark's.
it might just be more of an education or, you know, again, maybe somehow indicating that it's, you know, who can go on there, whether it's, you know, and I don't know if it's necessarily P O C D, maybe it's more of signage for use of open spaces and trails or something like that, you know, where you know, mountain bikes are fine, no motorized vehicles, that kind of stuff, you know, horses are okay. You know, maybe it's more of a designation or signage thing to do over the
Okay.
period.
Yeah,
is there a particular open space or trail that you feel it would be ideally suitable for designation as a horseback riding place or trail?
well, I think people use Pistol Creek. So I would start with Pistol Creek, and I would say it's okay for the ponies to be there. Now, other trails, I don't know, I mean, I unfortunately do not own a horse. So I guess I would have to turn to those who do and say, what trails do you guys use? Or you just use your own property or?
Most of the trails are blocked off by a town gate already,
Yeah,
and they're, but no one knows where those trails go, or if you bring a horse on there, or if you go out there with an ATV, if you can. And that all comes down to maybe the Park and Recreation Department signage. Okay? You know, anyone wants to go out one of those gates out there that's in the town, that just can use that key right there.
So I think, you know, what it boils down to is that for the most part, people that have horses are gonna ride nearby to where their horse is. Unless, you know, the idea is to provide a parking space that's ample enough for a truck and a horse trailer. to-
Right.
You know, to encourage people to come from other locations, which, you know, I know the state has designated trail riding trails, and they have groups that get together and they trailer their horses, and, you know, so it's kind of two different angles. But, you know, for me, because I live nearby to the Hubbard Park area, I always rode on the Blue Trail and the Canal Trail through Hubbard Park and up on the mountain there.
All right, so what should I do with this? Is it just about designating places for horseback riding and providing proper educational materials and signage in support of that designation?
You know, it's exploring which
so,
trails can be used for that. Yeah,
Okay, so explore.
and
So there-
market. And market.
This is probably,
Trail man.
so this could be worthy of like a committee to meet and get some feedback and figure out what locations should be designated. And then to follow up with some signage and educational materials in support of that. Is that a reasonable approach?
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
there's
as I
even
thought,
trails through Bicentennial Park too, that go through the woods, that go down and, you know, they're pathways, but that would be lovely on the list too.
Yeah, I thought about it after Chris made that recommendation. I think, you know, there's probably room at Bicentennial to, you know, create bridle paths if that's something that, you know, wants to be done. And I think that area would probably be I mean, I'm not a horse rider, but I would guess that would be a pleasant area to ride a horse.
They did some stone paths up through there already, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, does it Bicentennial, does it back up to, or does it connect to the Sheer property?
Yeah, everything's connected
Orchard
now.
Road?
You know, from Orchard Road to Norton Road's all connected now.
Okay, well, yeah, that would be one heck of a nice trail
All through,
if it could be developed or marked as such.
right to the Meriden line. It's all
Yeah.
there. I mean.
Yeah.
All right, so at least
Okay, good.
we got some good ideas there.
Yeah, all right, so we got through that list, which is good, because every time we go through this, we're just, you know, affirming what we have, tightening up the language, making sure we're not missing anything, and we're getting it a step closer to where it needs to be. And this is the real meat of the plan, are these recommendations.
We have everything you could think of in the town of Berlin, but no one knows about it, tell you the truth, or uses it. You know, it's there. It's more old time things that happened.
All right,
Blue
okay,
Trail is fully marked now.
all right, okay, next.
All right, so speaking of the plan, we continue to make progress on drafting sections of the plan, and we very recently, last week, shared with you the transportation and facilities and services section of the plan. And my question for you is, have you had a chance to look over these draft sections? Do we continue to be on the right track in terms of balancing information and data and maps and text? You know, are we capturing all of the important details and ideas of the many discussions we've had and all of the work that we've done? And so I'm happy to pull those sections up to flip through real quick if you'd like a little refresher on it, or four.
And so I was gonna say, I got through about half of them and I thought, you know, just like the other ones, that the balance was good, you know, read
Yeah.
good, so.
And here it is right here, transportation. And so we cover, I'll just go through this real quick. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, this will be your orientation. And if you've had a chance to take a look at it and there was something that you thought deserved some attention as I flip through it, you could bring that to my attention. So first of all, identifying the town's road network, with a lot of those being state roads, of course, and the different classifications of your roads in town. And just take a look at the inventory of roads that you have in town. And so we provide some information on that and why that's relevant. We take a look at your bridge facilities, and I do actually, I found the town had sent over a more comprehensive list. This comes from the National Bridge Inventory, which profiles all the bridges identified in that inventory, but town has a more exhaustive list. So I'm in the process of going through that information, incorporating it. The good news here is that most of your bridges are in pretty good condition, and the ones that needed attention, the town has been pretty proactive about replacing and improving bridges. And here's an example in this picture right here. So you're in pretty good shape as far as that's concerned. But I think, as you're all aware, these things need continual monitoring and maintenance to keep them in good condition. Transit, you know, we've talked about the transit in Berlin, with Connecticut Transit bus routes being pretty limited, and of course your commuter rail and regional rail service. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that your ridership for Berlin residents of transit for commuting is real low, even though your ridership numbers at the station are pretty high. They're pretty good. So you have people driving in from surrounding towns, but as far as Berlin residents are concerned, a lot more of you could be using the train and maybe bus to get to work, and we don't know all the reasons why that's not happening, or it's not convenient, but we definitely want to encourage people to use transit because it takes cars off the road.
Because the cost of transit went down and the cost of driving your car somewhere went up.
Well, that's
That's
exactly what's assisted this recovery. So this chart here shows 2020, this is the pandemic's effect, right? And this is Hartford line or total ons and offs. And so Hartford line Amtrak at Berlin Station, got really, really hit hard by the pandemic. But it fortunately is starting to recover. And just as you stated, part of that was the fares being waived on Hartford rail for a long period of time, and the cost of gas being, at some record highs. So hopefully that ridership will continue to rebound. Your sidewalk network, and we've talked a lot about that already, so I won't dwell upon it, but there it is, and we outline what the needs are with respect to that. We take a look at potential bike connectivity, and this is work that Jim did a few years ago, so we brought that into the plan. We talk about that commuting, how that commuting happens, and so here it is, right here. This is what I was talking about, public transportation. If you round it in one direction or another, it rounds down to 0 and not up to 1, because it's at like 0.3%. Traffic volume, and this is all data you've seen. It's just been a year or so since we collected all this data and did all this work, and we've updated it since we've collected it. So the data we're showing is what the most recent data that is available, by example, 2021 in this case. We profiled traffic safety, and this heat map shows where all those crashes happen, and no surprise rates on Berlin Turnpike and Route 9 and what the trends are. So that's the kind of information, and the purpose for putting all this information in one place is really to make the argument, to provide the reasoning, the rationale, and to make the argument in support of our recommendations. So if you read this recommendation and think to yourself, well, why in the world are they recommending this? Is this really an issue? We've tried our best to substantiate that in the preceding pages that lead up to our recommendations. So here, you've seen this before. Here they are as our goals, our strategies, our action items, and these are some of the things that we were talking about this evening in refining. And so these pages will continue to be refined over the next couple of months. Facilities and services. So these are town facilities, properties, services, everything the town provides to its residents and maintains. So we identify those various properties. In this case, parks aren't included. We have separate map for that. But it's public safety facilities, municipal facilities like the municipal complex, and the schools as well. And we document all those facilities, document the age of them, when the improvements have made. And this is really all about establishing the baseline. Where are these facilities at? Are there any major investments needed? Have investments been made on an ongoing basis? And it's important, periodically, and the POCD affords us an opportunity to do this once every 10 years to provide an overall assessment of where all of your resources are and what the status of those resources are. And so we've done that for the fire department as well.
Stop you on that one. All those dates are wrong on the firehouses, the numbers of the firehouse came first, all this other stuff. That's all.
Do you have accurate dates you could get me?
You go to the fire administrator or the fire marshal.
Okay, because this is what, if you go in the assessor's database and you pull the property card for each of these properties.
That's when the properties were improved.
Yeah.
It's not when like East Berlin Firehouse,
Yep.
is the first firehouse in town, which is, they go by company number 1. And company number is Kensington, which is second next building. Kensington was built in 70, not 68, I think it says up there. And then Berlin Firehouse, which had a lot of improvements, and the South Kinston, which is a town property.
Okay. Maureen, maybe I'll pull this page out of the document and can we just forward it over to the appropriate person at the fire department, just to have them
Yeah.
review some of these
Sure.
numbers and the language to make sure we got it right, and if there's any additional description they would like to add to this, we're very receptive to adding that. We've got room on the page, so.
They renamed the number of fire departments in years.
Yeah.
The ownership is different. That's old misinformation.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, school facilities, and fortunately, you're in real good shape here because these facilities have been invested in and they're nowhere near capacity because enrollment has declined, and the projections suggest that they will continue to meet your needs for the next decade or so. And there's our enrollment numbers. And this is research that was commissioned by the Board of Ed. Parks facilities, we've documented different types of parks and including school grounds that the town has, and there they lay out on the map. Now this map's a little different than your open space map, which includes conservation properties and protected properties. These are properties that are used primarily by Parks and Rec for programming or really as more active recreation parks, including your school grounds. And there's an inventory of the actual facilities, some discussion of the plan and future improvements. Then we talk about the range of services the town provides and some information on the facilities as well. And this was a really nice picture. That guy, that police officer, I believe he's now retired. I went to high school with him. So when I saw that on the police department's Facebook page, I couldn't help myself but to include it. It's a great picture as well. And we try to connect this plan with the community, and it's a nice way of doing it with a few of these images.
Ben?
This was Officer Bob Canto.
Oh,
He's not only did I go to high school with him, he's Portuguese. So I went to like church with him, and which I used to love. I've known his family for a long time.
forever. Good.
Yeah. And continuing on, so we profile all the various, what I like to describe as public facing services, the services that are most greatly impacted by growth in the town, by population growth. And the real purpose of this is to get a sense for how robust these services are, which services they provide to the community, and whether or not they have the capacity to absorb more residents. So we're a little less concerned about finance department and HR and all those various other town departments, and more concerned about the departments that provide direct services to residents and that are most impacted by population change.
Can I just, I'm back to my fire service, I'm sorry. But
Yep.
it's up there. The town needs to look into, supporting the fire services in town more than they do. It's a volunteer system.
Right.
They don't own the firehouses except one. The firehouses are owned by the firemen. Maintenance on those firehouses are getting very high. Numbers of volunteers are going down. They need to look into the future about this, because if the fire department goes down, the volunteers go down,
Yeah.
then they got to put paid services in or whatever. We can stop that going down by putting monies into the fire service, helping those firemen where they are now. Right now, they just buy the fire apparatus and equipment. That's all the town pays for. Okay, the rest of it is firemen paying themselves.
Right.
you know, and the fundraising needed to do that and stuff like that. The town does pay a rent to those firehouses, surely doesn't cover their expenses. So the support of the firehouses, I think, is something that we should look at in the next 10 years. Or we're not gonna have that volunteer system. And I posed to the town years ago as a fire chief, telling them what it would cost to put a paid minimum fire department in. And it would expand their cost for fire service tenfold. Easy.
I believe it. I believe
You
it.
know, so if the town could start investing in that fire service more than they do. They have that rotating plan now that's been good to get fire apparatus up to date, stuff like that. That has been great. But when those fire departments fall down, and my threat was the fire chief was years ago, when they cut my budget. You'll find your fire trucks out on Farmington Avenue to Monday morning, find another firehouse, put your fire trucks in. They got a little scared that they didn't cut my budget. But, you know, we need to promote these volunteers more. They gotta have the best equipment there is on their backs. You know, and it seems to be a lot of money. But compared to paid fire department in town, it's peanuts. And it's
Right.
for the town is really start investing every year,
I have a
get funds
question.
invested.
I have a question. The Kensington Fire Department, the one on the Berlin Turnpike, doesn't have a Berlin Fire Department, doesn't have a big cell tower up on
A
it?
big sour tower,
Okay,
they have
but-
income coming
Okay, so
in, they have an income coming,
And
yes,
does that income support that firehouse?
yes.
And then some, right?
Yes, well, they give most of their extra monies to the veterans and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
They have from that tower. But the other departments like East Berlin and Kensington,
Why don't
No.
they have one?
because there's
Cell
not a need for a cell tower in those spots.
Like in South Kensington, you could
Okay.
definitely use a cell tower over in South
They put one
Kensington.
up a month,
Well, no, but that doesn't, still doesn't do good.
you know, but
Not
I'm just. You know,
I'm
that's,
just trying to
that's
think outside the
that
box.
cell company, you know, thing in the siting commission, which we don't have anything to do with. The siting
Yeah.
is.
Well, I'm just thinking they're collecting this rent,
You know,
I mean, I know
but-
they're trying to do good, but.
but, you know, the thing is
Yeah,
that
they
we
can't
wanna
help all the
prevent
other fire
going
houses.
into a system that's gonna cost us. tenfold what we charge us now. Okay, and that's what our goal has to be, is to keep the system that we have. You know, and we went to on-call dollars, very small amount, a little retirement program.
Yeah,
But that had some rules in there kind of weird. I know I had 40 service, I had retirement. But so it's just something that I think the town. In a plan like this should be really thinking. Because we lost our ambulance service to a paid service because we couldn't do the ambulance service no more. And that's gonna happen to the fire department, you know? And it was very close 4 or 5 years ago. You know, we didn't have town employees that were firemen right now, Days would have a problem. Because people aren't letting their firemen out of work
Mhm.
right now during the day. So we have town employees that are firemen that go to fires, while they go to fires, we have a coverage, but they need to put that.
Okay. We'll take
Yeah.
we'll take that into consideration.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
And
Okay,
so in addition to public safety, we also talk about your water and sewer districts, and you know, this is certainly very worthy of attention and discussion for reasons we've talked about before. We provide some mapping to that effect to show where the infrastructure is, where the supply areas are, and in this case, it's your public water supply areas. Who is served, what share of the population is served by which districts, where the sewer service areas are, and they largely correspond with where you provide public water supply. What some of the outstanding needs are in those systems, we document. We also talk about stormwater and flood control infrastructure, and your reference and try to link to your stormwater management plan. And then finally, once again, summarize that with our recommendations.
And the recommendations, is there a recommendation in there to combine the water departments and the sewer departments into one head? I don't care if they're separate entities, but they're into one head.
So can you say that again?
Well, the water departments, and the Kessling Water Department, they're all little different entities. The ones under, the Worthington is now under control of Berlin. But combining the services and combining
Yeah.
the upkeep.
It's up in there, there's some.
Right here?
Okay, I can't read from here.
Was it
Yeah,
set?
okay, yeah. So we do make that recommendation. And
Yeah.
we make a recommendation to revisit. Yeah, to revisit the potential consolidation of the water districts for both drinking water supply and wastewater collection purposes. And as you all know, this has been studied a number of times before, and the recommendation has been to pursue a course of action that would result in consolidation, because it would be reduce costs and enable better maintenance and management of the systems.
Okay,
Okay, so yeah, we're there. We're absolutely getting behind that.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so that's the most recent two sections that we drafted, and what we're currently working on is the final section, which is cultural resources, which will include your historic properties districts. Farming as a cultural resource as well, and we'll provide that section to you for your review prior to our March meeting. Now, it's getting pretty late, so I want to get right into this. Is our draft future land use map. This would be the at least the third month in a row we've come to you with this, and we want to get this right. So we want to afford you plenty of opportunities to review it, to come back to it with a fresh set of eyes, and we also want to update you on some minor revisions that we've made since our meeting last month. So before I jump into some of the revisions we've made, do you have any more questions, comments for us following up on our review of this last month?
Oh,
Good. Well, let me jump ahead then, because we do want to run these recommended revisions by you, and see if you're on the same page with us. So the black circles there indicate areas where we've made modifications to the plan, and so these call out boxes here, the one here and here, is the way the plan looked last month, and this big map here is the new version, the updated version. And so these black circles correspond to these areas here. So let me just start right here. Right, Chamberlain Highway and I'm sorry, the name of this plaza, Ferndale Plaza, correct? Yeah. So prior to this, we had it, and we had a lot of back and forth about whether or not this was the right designation. We had it as a mixed use area, and we had some pushback. We went back and forth on the pros and cons of that. And I think we finally settled on just keeping it designated as commercial. Are you in agreement that that's the right way to proceed? I think we lost the room, Jim.
We did. I don't, yeah, wow.
I'm still here.
Hey, Steve, what do you think?
Hey.
Steve thinks it's great.
I like it.
Sorry,
All right,
guys,
we got you
that
back.
was on me for not being plugged in.
Okay, all right.
Can you hear me?
That,
Protecting your
Maureen,
house.
We can't hear
your
you.
battery life is
Can't hear you.
extremely predictable because I think this happened last month too, or the month before.
Hold on, I don't know if you can hear us.
We can hear you. Can you hear me? Not yet.
One here.
Technology, so.
1 minute, 1 minute.
What? You just disconnect.
Unknown. Oh, no, son of. You want to?
No, I wanna go home. Let's see. Oh, I'm on the street, nightmare.
All right, can you hear us? Can you hear me now?
So sorry.
How about a thumbs up if you can see me? Okay, you can see me, but you can't hear me.
Yes, we got both.
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
All right, good. Okay, so where we left off was Ferndale Plaza. We've changed that to commercial future land use, red, to match the rest of our commercial business districts. And have removed that mixed use designation. And are we on board with that? Is that the direction you're interested in going?
Yeah, that encompasses Ferndale, and does it also encompass across the street?
It does, and those are all currently zoned in the same way.
Okay. All right.
And another, and a parcel to the south, which some of that is open space, which is why we have the green, but there is a parcel that is not designated as open space that's in that same zoning district, so that's also show that.
Is that the funeral?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's got to be the funeral.
Great swamp in it.
But so just as a notation on that, you know, there's been discussion with regard to how to utilize the underperforming property that's on the west side of the Chamberlain Highway there. It is all PSA zone, which is also what is at Webster Square.
Okay.
So it's the connection, just kind of as a reminder, that those are
A restaurant.
connected with regard to uses, so,
Maybe I should.
and we've gotten inquiries for both mixed use, but also it's been pursued for commercial for obviously many years.
Francisco, Chamberlain Highway is misspelled.
I have good news for you. I since caught that. We've since corrected it, which was kind of inconvenient because I had to update a lot of different maps, but
Yeah,
yeah, we left the A out. Yeah,
Yes.
we've since corrected that. So thank you.
Okay. Do you want to ask about that?
so, yeah, I'm wondering, where Jensen Garden Center is located
On the Chamberlain Highway.
on the Chamberlain Highway. It is commercial.
It's residential.
Well, it
is
should be
a-
commercial. It should be a restaurant.
So my guidance on this is to remind you all that this isn't an existing land use map. It's a future land use map. So the way I'd like you to think about approaching this is that if that use were to go away tomorrow, right? If it were, the building were to fall down on itself and people were to walk away from it, what would that property be best reused as? What kind of use? And that's the real role of the future land use map, is to think about how should that area or property be used.
Well, it's surrounded by residential, so my first reaction is, a big residential home. However, it's a great, I don't know, it's a great spot for a business too. A nice breakfast nook would be good.
And And we're not putting anyone out of business with this map. This map is an overall guide. And it doesn't compel the town to change zoning and to make properties or businesses non-conforming.
Yeah,
What is dark blue up there?
We also, I think our description of the neighborhood residential area, which is this light green, is I believe sufficient enough or flexible enough to allow for some commercial uses to be mixed in. I need to revisit that language, but I think we do allow for that.
in the light green.
In which color?
The lime green, which is our neighborhood residential. I think I know we include institutional uses like schools and town properties,
Churches.
churches, exactly. Is that, let me ask you this, is that like one of the only examples you could think of where there's a business located in these residential areas that
Too bad.
it needs to be called out or protected in any way?
Well, I think we talked at one point about the Worthington Ridge area. And allowing certain commercial uses.
In the historics, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Or, doctors,
well, none of it, that's where.
On Worthington Ridge, yeah.
Rich, yeah.
Yeah,
doctors, lawyers' offices, like the OP zone up in Farmington.
I'm wondering if that's where some of the red is,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know? Like if you could see more in Worthington before it splits off, I'm wondering if that's because the red is commercial.
It is, correct. It's, yeah,
Yeah.
business. Yep.
yeah, but the majority, you're looking, are you looking to the north of the interchange there?
Well, from like where
Worthington.
Spruce Brook and,
Yeah. Oh, or Spruce Brook is, yeah. But Worthington Ridge is pretty much left residential.
yeah, so what I remember the conversation was, I made a comment about something akin to what they do in the South Glastonbury area.
Yeah.
Where there's historic homes, but there are little shops within some of the homes that just kind of make it.
Right.
Yeah, we have that in the recommendations, the actions, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
The strategies. So.
Yeah, so like a doctor, a lawyer, could have a doctor, a lawyer's office there.
Bakery.
Gee.
Bakery.
Okay, so I think we need to give some consideration as to whether or not we need to amend the description of these residential areas to allow for some flexibility for those types of uses, or to call out areas like Worthington Ridge and where the restaurant is separately in a different group, a different color on the map.
I don't.
And what's the name of the restaurant so that I could find it later on the map?
no, it wasn't a restaurant, it was the garden center. right?
I think they're talking about Kensington Gardens Center.
Johnson's.
It's 398 Chamberlain.
Oh, it's a
Highway.
garden center, not a restaurant.
Right.
Yeah,
Johnson's Garden Center?
yeah.
Well,
398.
Rose now.
It's number 398. It's actually subject to, I think it's a foreclosure right now. And a garden center is a special permit use in the residential zone that it's in, so. A
Okay.
change of use to commercial isn't something that's feasible with the way our regulations are written today.
Yeah,
The one suggestion, I don't, and again, I don't know how much time everybody wants to spend tonight, but if we could go through all these change areas and just tell you what we've done and why. And it sounds like everybody's still thinking about some of these issues, and if we're not needing to finalize it tonight, that'll give you some time to mull these things over, and then we can try to attack it next meeting and wrap it.
Yeah, that would be an excellent idea.
Yeah, any
yeah.
changes that were made. I mean, if we could have just bulletproof, a bullet thing of where changes were made, would help us. Like, I'm looking at the Beth Covenant Church, we're at 372 and Route 9, whatever. What's that dark blue now? You got a circle across from Garden, the Golden Triangle,
Mill Street, yeah.
Mill Street.
I don't think we changed that one, Francisco, but we were talking about OT.
Yeah,
what
that's
are we gonna do?
office technology. I circled it because we wanted to discuss it with you.
Yeah,
Well, the Golden Triangle, but the off technology, that's the pink, whatever it is, but blue next to that, you got circled. What is that there?
Office
That's
technology now.
Office
Yeah.
technology,
That's office technology there.
correct? Yeah,
Okay, so,
yeah, let's just have a quick overview of what was changed and let me think.
Okay.
on that. I just-
all right,
the
so
issues
so I'll
were-
march through these and I'll explain to you what we did and why. So next one over is this location right here, and you'll see we added this additional one in orange, and that's moderate density residential that allows for attached housing or apartment buildings. We did not have that on the prior map. It is a vacant lot that has been subject of development applications for multifamily type housing. It's across from the apartments in the mill building, and so it made sense to go ahead and designate that.
It was
Given-
part of the mill redevelopment plan that
Yeah.
you approved. And then the additional units on the other side of the street weren't built, so. That's what we're talking about,
Right.
not having it in the industrial there.
Up on New Britain Road, we had the east side up here along the tracks all designated as commercial, but there is some existing multifamily in that, in a mill building
Prentice
in
Place.
that area. Yeah, so we called that out, and then the idea was once we changed that to multifamily, we were potentially left with.
we lost you for a
Okay,
while.
so we lost you again, our Zoom disconnected,
Okay, I'm back, you're back, right?
so start
Okay.
back over.
Yeah, so you'll see in this area, here's once again, the map last month and the map now. We called out, we identified the mill building apartments on the east side of New Britain Road along the rail tracks as
Prentice Place.
thank you, as moderate density residential. And we expanded the village center up just a couple of parcels to meet that, okay?
Yep.
All right. And next down here, between the railroad tracks, Four Rod Road, Kensington Road, there's an area that's zoned in industrial, but there was a residential development in that area, so we now show that as residential. Okay, it's what it was before, and Jim, what's the name of that development in that area?
Yeah, I gotta zone myself. Oh, there's the
It's the attached
senior
housing.
condos. Yeah.
Yeah, senior condos, yeah.
Yeah,
Hatchery Brook.
Hatchery Brook, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we show that as residential. And then up here in the northeast corner of town, up here, we just refined this. We had a large area of shown as rural residential, and or it had been shown as office technology, and we changed that all to rural residential up here.
It's kind of on the other side of Cold Spring Farms from Northeast Utilities, so it seemed to make more sense.
Then down here, we circled these appear as they did last month. We have the Golden Triangle property, which is we still show as mixed use. We did have some feedback from EDC to consider, or from Chris Hedge to consider changing this to industrial. Jim and I talked about it. We feel we want to keep the options open for this property and keep it as mixed use. We wanted get your feedback on that.
I
you know,
think
real
Chris
quick.
I think Chris has reversed his course on that one, so he's
Okay,
he's
maybe
he's
less
on
of an
with it.
issue.
Yeah, right.
The office technology here, that's the current zoning. So, you know, there were also thoughts about what, you know, should this be opened up to industrial or any other type of use here? And I think we feel we should keep it in that category.
Pretty
But
much,
then,
pretty much not usable.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about that. The access from 372 is not really available, not feasible. So,
yeah, you can't sneak in the driveway next to Bethany Covenant Church, so you gotta pick up the access off
Yeah.
of Beckley Road. Some of it's usable, but then, you know, it does
Yeah.
it makes us think about what we should designate that.
right. And then up in here is something Jim and I were looking at along Deming Road. There's the town-owned property where the trailer park is, and some residential properties. So we show
Fields Farm
that
Crossing, yeah.
right as moderate density residential. However, some of those properties are zoned industrial, and the question is, you know, do you want to support continued use as residential, or you prefer to hold that for future industrial? And it's really just a handful of properties in this area. So that's something to think about.
Industrial.
I'd rather leave it as industrial.
Yeah,
Okay. Which is why we hadn't changed it as of yet. All right, and next, we changed this description to parks and protected open space. We just updated the name of it. I think we had it just as parks and open space before, because we're trying only to show, as accurate as our mapping is, only the parks and protected open space parcels, because those are really the only properties that we can be assured of that will remain as open space. If it's a privately held or not protected open space, or a property owned by the town but not designated as a park or protected for open space, then we can't be certain of its future.
And I think that we've got like state open space, land trust properties, so it's just not town open space, it's
Yeah.
protected, you know, in other categories also.
Exactly. And the purpose of showing all these parks and protected open space on the map is to kind of subtract those out from the equation, to show that these are the areas where you're not going to build and develop. Okay. Office technology, we want to talk about that. That happens to be the name of the zoning district. It's not necessarily that intuitive in terms of what type of development is that and what does that mean? And so I think we have a little work to do with that to provide a better descriptor for that. And I think it'd be best not to tie it to the exact name of the zoning district. So getting into our descriptions of these categories, and this really, the map without these descriptions doesn't carry a lot of meaning. You really have to get into these descriptions. This is where all the power is. So we did make some revisions. Neighborhood residential, we added in red here, and senior housing developments. We didn't call those out specifically before. But you'll notice, and this is what I was talking about before, we don't talk about commercial uses interspersed. We do talk about schools, churches, town facilities, etc. So we need to take a look at, if we want to open up some areas to limited commercial development, we either need to include some language to support that and at the same time control it so that we're not opening it up completely, or designate those areas separately. And next, as I mentioned, office technology. I just think we need to come up with a better name for this. We have yet to, Jim and I kind of bounced some ideas back and forth last week. We have yet to arrive at that, but we'll come back to you at our next meeting with a better idea for what to call these areas. All right, so our next steps in this process are we're doing internal review right now, the sections of the document that we shared with you. And so if there's anything that you'd like to call attention to, with the data, the fire stations being an example, let us know. And we want to get it all right. And we have an opportunity now. We have time to get it right. So please provide us feedback. So we've obviously used this meeting to review any comments that you have and discuss those changes. And we continue to receive comments from boards and commissions. So in March, we intend, or we will be in the position to share a draft of the POCD at the end of March with council and CROG for comment. If for some reason you feel we have more work to do and we're not there yet, we're not compelled to do that in March because we have plenty of time. That could wait until April. But that sharing the draft of the document with both council and CROG really starts the clock ticking. It starts a 65-day period, which is a minimum period. It's not a maximum. So doesn't mean we have to adopt it within 65 days. It means we can't adopt it until 65 days after. And that's a state requirement. It's really intended to allow both the council of governments and your town council to have adequate time to review the document and provide us feedback. We would then receive their comments, share any comments received with you, and make revisions to the plan as necessary. Our next steps would be, and this could happen end of April, could happen early March, would be to file a draft of the plan with the town clerk. And that really starts the process for the entire public. We make it available to the public. We post a draft of it on the town website, which would put us in the position to bring the plan to public hearing for adoption in May. If that needed to be in June, that's fine. But I think it would be to our advantage not to let it languish by going into the summer. June's a really good time. We could still get everyone's attention before school gets out and that sort of thing. So we lost our room. Okay, so our very next steps are to look into some of these items and to follow up on the things we talked about this evening. To finish our final section, the cultural resource section, and to share that with you. And then really to prepare a complete draft of the plan to share with council and CROG. And then at our meeting next month, wherever we're at, we'll provide you an update and get feedback from you as necessary, wherever we're at in this process. Okay. So this is how our schedule lays out. We're here now, and we're, this, of course, as you're familiar, has been stretched out over time. We lost them again. My gosh. All right, you're back.
Yeah.
So our schedule, as you're all aware, our schedule has stretched out a little over time, but we're still in very good shape with respect to your deadline. We continue to run, I think, a very effective process. And I think we're going to be going in very good shape going into the process of getting the plan adopted. Our next meeting, we understand that there's the Casio event. Is it at the AquaTurf, Maureen? Are they not hearing me?
Oh, boy.
Or they look frozen?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see what, I think I put my phone back on here and see.
Oh, they're back.
We're back again.
Okay, all right. We're almost there. Okay, so there is a CFPZA conflict at our next regular meeting on the 23rd. I understand some folks were planning on attending that. So can we, before we adjourn, can we identify another date in March that would work, preferably later in March to give us some time to get work done?
Either the 27th, the 28th. Yeah, he's gotta go beyond that. Maybe the 27th or the 28th of March, possibly.
I have a conflict on the, well, let me see. I have a conflict on the 28th. 27th, I'm okay.
27th is a Monday. How does everyone look on Monday, the 27th? Okay,
Monday.
Smart. Okay. So far, everybody's saying it's good on the 27th. Monday?
Okay, we'll hold that for now. Maureen will probably need to check into things just to confirm it.
Yeah, I
That
wanted
will
to.
turn to other
calendar,
meetings,
make sure.
rooms, et cetera, right?
Yep,
And then, of course, what time would we do it?
Our usual 6:30?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I'm flexible, whatever time works for you.
Thirty's fine.
The 6:30 or 6?
6 is fine.
6 good?
6 o'clock, yeah. Yeah.
6?
Earlier is better, absolutely.
Yeah, earlier is always better.
Yeah, I have to start on Zoom.
Yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Maureen, how about 6, or you wanna push for 5:30?
That's the commissions, the
I can-
committees.
I can do 5:30 or, but
Do 5.
you can do 5? I hear 5. No 5. 5:30?
5:30?
You can try, I'll try.
Well, you can join in. How about for you, Maureen?
I see nothing on the town calendar on the 27th.
All right, so let's aim
That's so far,
for,
not everybody's drawn there, but
5:30. That what we're aiming for.
I think so, let's, all right, we're aiming for 5:30, only because of work hours.
Sure.
All right,
Okay, so please hold that date and Maureen will, confirm, just to make sure that that's gonna line up with the rest of the schedule over there, but, let's hold that for now.
yes.
Please do follow up in the interim. If you have, any more comments for us, feedback, notice anything that should be corrected, we're very receptive to your input. And with that said, that concludes my presentation. So thank you, and I'll leave it to you folks to close out your meeting.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jim, as well.
Thank
Before
you.
I get buffered out. And thank you, Steve Biella.
No problem.
All righty, for taking, and Steve is the 27th March at 5:30, good for you for the next
Yeah,
meeting?
it's fine.
Or as we sit, okay. All right, terrific. Anything else? Do we need any other business, or can we call the meetings?
all we,
At, all right, so we can
8:50.
8:50 adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Sandy, second by Diane. Further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Have a
Okay,
good night, everybody.
good night,
All
everyone.
right, good night, everyone.
All right, thank you. What do you do? I gotta get that,